What's going on, my peeps? Your boy Versatile is back with another video. Back here to give my review of Marvel's Avengers single player campaign, or in other words, the story. How was the story that Crystal Dynamics developed for Marvel's Avengers? Yes, it's about 10 hours, and it's literally taking me about 10 hours to beat it. If anything, it probably took me about 12 hours to beat it because of the some levels or parts of the story is kind of difficult to get through the way they are constructed. And one of them I actually kind of rethought about in terms of why it may have been so difficult. But we're going to get into that when we get to that in the story. There will be spoilers at some point, so I'm going to kind of try to keep it light. And then I'll, pretty much say I'm about to start spoiling it, and then we'll get into all the nitty gritty. But before we do, make sure you guys ignite the like button on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure you guys hit that notification bell so that way YouTube informs you when I drop videos. Yes, YouTube won't let you know a thing unless you hit that notification bell. So go ahead and do that right there. Now, let's get into the video. So, what are my thoughts on Marvel's Avengers, the story? It was phenomenal. It was such a great story. It really put you in the lens of a fan writing comics along with all the other comics. So the way the world is established is that clearly comic books exist. They know they have comics about themselves. Kamala is writing a comic for A-Day. That's the whole point of Avengers A-Days, for fans, for comic books to be selected to win, and I think meet the Avengers to some capacity or whatever. And that's the beginning. That's the point of A-Day. And I love how we got to see through Kamala's lens dealing with the Avengers or going through the battles that she goes through. And oh man, it was really good. And it was, to me, the pacing of the story felt fine. Like it was more emphasis on Kamala than it was the other Avengers, even though they all had their moments to shine or moments to come together and synchronize. The story was about Kamala and Inhumans. Really dope. That's one way you can bring the Inhumans into the world of Marvel. As we saw, I don't think it was an MCU, but it was Marvel nonetheless. They tried the Inhumans TV show. And although it was cool, it was good, I didn't have a problem with it. It just really didn't hit that well. And it started off on Hulu and then it disappeared. They also have a MODOK series coming to Hulu. I think it was supposed to be geared for this year. I don't know if COVID-19 pushed that off, but MODOK might come out next year now, and it's a story about MODOK and how George Tarleton becomes MODOK. So we see Marvel really trying to expand outside of the same 6 heroes that we've been accustomed to see, or 7 if you want to include Spider-Man. And the fact that this story focuses on Inhumans, the struggle of Inhumans, much like, I guess you could say, X-Men, that, to me, I know they wanted to kind of brand them differently, but Inhumans are the same as X-Men to me. Like, I understand, like, the X-Men are mutants and they have an X gene, and humans have, I guess what you could call a T gene, because it's Terrigen that transforms them into an Inhuman and gives them powers. Yeah, the Fantastic Four is a little different because they got their powers from going out in space and getting hit with, some gamma rays and whatever, and got their powers that way. So that's why they're not considered Inhuman, I don't think, or a mutant. But I like the struggle that they show for Inhumans, and I like how they go along with the story, even when it comes to the Avengers. It was very good. It was very well put together, and it ended very strong. There's moments in the story where you feel it kind of tug at your heartstrings a little bit. You know what I'm saying? They tug. And then there's moments where you feel really good. You feel like, yeah, and then you feel like, come on now, like, really, come on. Like, it has its ups and downs in a good way for a story. And so for 10 to 12 hours, I would say probably more on the lines of 10. The way I've been uploading my gameplay, I have about 8 parts, and each part is over an hour or so. But that's with the gameplay. If you remove the gameplay, I think it's probably much more around like the 4 to 5 hour range if you remove gameplay for the story. Great story. It's a great way to establish the Avengers in this world, and for us to get to know each Avenger, each hero, so that way they become familiar with us and we can play with them, whether it's multiplayer or by yourself doing all the missions and whatnot. So now let's enter the world of spoilers. Spoilers. But now we're going to actually talk about the story. So with Kamala, like I said, they start off with her geeked. I don't want to say she's somewhere between 13 and 15, geeked up. She got this comic that she wrote up that she hopes that the Avengers will read, or that she hopes will win the contest. You reach A-Day, getting off the helicarrier, approaching all the little different parts of this, celebration slash, basically an amusement, borderline amusement park, carnival-like experience. And there's hubs for Iron Man. There's a arcade system where you see Captain Marvel games, where you see, I think maybe X-Men or Wolverine, but you see all the other heroes, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk. They all got their own little games in there. Black Widow has a game that you play, Great experience that you almost feel like you're there on A-Day as well. Like, you almost forget that A-Day situation takes place because you're kind of geeking out yourself. Like, oh yeah, what? Ooh, hey. And you're collecting like 5 comic books, one basic representative of almost every hero. And then when you go through and look at your comics in the game that you collect throughout playing, you'll see that they reference different years, like old ones, newer ones in terms of comic books. So that's dope. But in terms of the story, you do collect like 5 in the beginning to really establish the flow of comic book lore and whatnot. Really fun, really cool. But then you see Kamala kind of get dissed. And it's because of basically, I guess you could say, what she looks like. Because it's like this stuck-up privileged kid who's like talking to her. And she's feeling down. But then she remembers what a hero says that she didn't know. Or the guy didn't know who said that. And it was Cap who said that, right? And he's only a real fan would da-da-da. And she's like, only a real fan would know what I just said. Boom, checkmate, bam. So you go through that, and what happens to Kamala is in every situation where she's like getting a comic book, exploring this carnival, she runs into each Avenger. Now she didn't get to talk to Hulk, and she barely got to talk to Tony Stark, but she talked to Cap, she talks to Black Widow, she talks to Thor. So you see like, oh wow, they're really establishing like her. And then they read her comic, like Black Widow remembers it. Let's see. I think Thor remembered it. Cap remembered her story. Now, she didn't get to talk to Iron Man like that because he actually kind of came through the area where they were standing and then blasted off to make his grandeur entrance to A-Day. But he was like kind of talking to her a little bit as he flew off. So you get to see her just have these moments with the Avengers right before the A-Day situation takes place. There was an earthquake that was unexpected from everybody. Even the villains at part, that kind of threw off certain things. And that earthquake was from basically this Kree monster, but that's like toward the end. So light spoilers to the end. But so the A-Day Terrigen reactor starts to act up, and you go through the A-Day mission that you guys have seen several times. You're playing as most of the heroes. You take out Taskmaster. And then Cap is on the helicarrier trying to figure out how to stop the Terrigen. You see it blow up. And then, it's the end of everything. Then it's like 5 years later, the Avengers are disappeared, gone, without a trace. And Kamala's trying to figure out where everybody went, what happened on A-Day. She cracks into Tony Stark's, server or his account via, like, I guess, AIM servers. And she starts downloading data for herself to kind of run through. And then AIM pings her computer, bricks it, and then comes after her. So when she makes it back to her little hideout spot, like she has her own little HQ or little headquarters, she's in there trying to parse through the data, and she comes across a video of the helicarrier, the war table scene, of where Cap was trying to work things out, and you see George Tarleton run off and then close the door behind them. So, and you see Cap kind of look back, and Kamala's like, yo, did Tarleton settle? Yo, he killed Cap. So she's trying to escape because now they know where she's at. She's trying to make it through the city. Other information she's got leads her to perhaps going to a whole nother state. On her way to trying to escape all these bots and AIM, she gets caught by Monica. And then Monica and a very early stage MODOK, it's still George Tarleton, head's a little bigger, but it's not MODOK yet, basically invites her to join them and then help them with their research and they cure her because they think Inhumans are a disease. Or at least George Tarleton does. He doesn't even know what's happening to him. But so they're painting the Inhuman thing just like the mutants for that matter. They're painting the Inhuman race as basically diseased, sick people that need help, that are dangerous, this and the third. And to a degree, that's understandable because they don't know themselves what's really happening with them. And a lot of them probably have not controlled their powers well, or maybe using their powers for bad. So they're definitely not putting the spotlight on the Inhumans in general in a good way. So, of course, understandably, there is some concern for Inhumans. But they're painted as being diseased and contagious and whatnot. So she breaks out of the car. We see that scene that Crystal Dynamics has showed us. She breaks off, runs, escapes, makes it to Utah, finds a helicarrier, runs into the Hulk. She finds Cap's shield. Hulk is like, come here. So she's trying to get away from Hulk. Hulk just wanted the shield, disappears. Then finally shrinks down into into Bruce, because Kamala on her way around the helicarrier has to fight a bunch of bots and whatnot. Then the Hulk comes through and basically kind of saves her because she passes out, because whenever she embiggens, she doesn't have complete control or complete mastery over her abilities yet, or hasn't built up endurance to use it. So she passes out after uses embiggen, and then Bruce is talking to her. She gives him the same data, and she's like, look, see, Tarleton set up Cap. And then Bruce is kind of weary, kind of believes it, doesn't quite know. And then Bruce basically tries to write her off to go home. And he's like, well, I'll deal with it. You go home. She's like, no, I can't. We got to do this. We'll do it. And he's like, look at you. You're sick. And like, we did this to you and da-da-da. So as she's like kind of sort of embracing her powers, you see Bruce basically tearing at her, or tearing her away from that, making her second guess herself because of her powers. And it's understandable why Bruce is going to feel that way about Inhumans and to Kamala herself. And that's because he feels that way about himself. So he's basically self-spewing his own negligence and resistance to what he is, and putting that on her. And so she's like, she's really torn at accepting and accepting herself fully, and or is she actually sick? One of the things that you notice about, or that she kind of makes mention of through early on in the story, and then she really emphasizes it towards the end, is like, I've never felt sick. I never had no temperature. I never felt like I needed help. I feel fine. Why do people keep telling me I'm sick? And so that's her throughout her journey, of course, in the story, coming to the realization that like, she's not sick. She's a person still. She just has powers. She's an Inhuman. She has abilities, and that should not be taken away from her. But, as she's getting there, Bruce is giving her this, and then they go find Tony. So on the journey of finding Tony, you run into fighting Abomination with the Hulk. Yeah, Tarleton releases Abomination on Hulk. They fight. Hulk wins, of course. And then they go on to continue to find Tony. Tony is, of course, mad at Bruce because Bruce basically set the Avengers up in this way of painting them as the bad guys in a way. But again, understanding Bruce's perspective, of course the Avengers are kind of dangerous because they're powerful and they have powers, and that breeds competition. Remember what Vision said from Civil War. So, of course, Bruce is like, this is kind of our fault because of who we are. Tony's mad because he's like, look, this is why because of you, Bruce. You basically gave them the green light to shut us down and hunt us down. So Tony's living out in like a little trailer in his old home, like Golden Acres, just way out. And then AIM comes after them because Tony takes, Kamala gives Tony the encrypted files. He, decrypts it. And then when they get to see the full video of what happened on A-Day, I think they got to see the full video. No, they almost did. They were going to watch it. Tony got to see some of it. And then as he was encrypting it, AIM came to come after them. So now you're going around Tony Stark's, little broke down mansion trying to find all his little put together Iron Man pieces to put together a functional enough suit to, take out the AIM bots before you can all go and leave and go back to the Chimera, which is a helicarrier. Upon them doing so, Kamala got tipped that AIM was coming after her when she was at her little wannabe headquarters, and Tony got tipped off that AIM was coming to them via a hacker named Tiny Dancer. So they're like, okay, who's Tiny Dancer? Who's helping us? They journey on to go to Chimera. Tony then continues the encryption process of that file that Kamala gave him. But in the meantime, now you got to go with Iron Man, one of his prototype suits, fly to one of AIM's facilities to get the fabrication equipment so that way he can make new suits. Its mission is basically like just a one-off. You gotta just fly through everything. I didn't know that at first because I was like blasting stuff. And then I realized, you know what? Let's just go ahead and fly through this. And I got one of the trophies. I wish I knew this before because I would have did it at a harder difficulty. But nonetheless, you do that with Tony. You get the equipment. You go back to the helicarrier. Now he can fabricate his original Iron Man suit. So this is when you run into one of the hardest missions in the story campaign, and it's called Alone Against AIM. You're Iron Man, basically playing King of the Hill against a ton of bots while Jarvis tries to basically hack through the security system so that way Iron Man can continue into the AIM facility. It took me about 15 tries. This is in my story gameplay part 4. This was hard, but it made you really think about how to use Iron Man in a situation like that, because when you think about the title Alone Against AIM, symbolically, that's essentially what's taking place right now. Like, he literally is by himself, or the Avengers are kind of not put together, and they're trying to go against the monstrosity that AIM is now. AIM is now the protector of the world, or at least the U.S. anyway. So they mean a lot of business. And for Tony, he has to go in there by himself and try to do what he has to do for this mission. I kind of forgot what I ultimately had to do for it. I think you had to shut something down, but I can't 100% remember. But this mission was crazy hard, and at first I was like, this mission seems like it's so built for multiplayer, but I think the purpose of the mission also was to let you know the gravitas, the gravity, the weight, the magnitude that we're about to embark on as the Avengers going against AIM. I think that's what they were trying to convey with this mission. So it made me look at it a little differently, and I wasn't as mad at it anymore once I also beat it, because if you are using Iron Man, you do know, unlock all your weapons, unlock the lasers, unlock the rockets. Because for me, when I did beat it, I finally realized what I needed to use, and that was the lasers. The lasers is a proximity creator. So as you use your lasers, it creates space around Iron Man. And what that did for me, especially when I had my intrinsic energy to use it, was clear out people out of the way, so that way they wouldn't all gang up on me. And that allowed me to keep them free of Jarvis hacking, and that allowed me time to breathe and recapture some breath while dealing with all these bots. And then it also bought the Hulkbuster some time to come out so I could use it to really clear out some space. That's how I beat that mission. So you beat that. He gets back to the helicarrier. He finds Kamala in his suit, and he sees Kamala trying her suit out and stuff like that. Now, this actually may have happened before, because I'm always running through the helicarrier. But Tony sees her and tells her, like, yo, I dig the outfit, because she kind of made herself like a superhero outfit. And he's like, I dig it. It looks good. Like, he's embracive of her powers and her abilities. And that basically kind of tears at her again, because you got Bruce telling her like she's sick, she's diseased and inhuman, and then Tony's like, I dig it, you look cool. Hey, now how do I look in my suit? So that's what happens there. Now I'm kind of getting lost in some story parts, but basically, that's what happens. So you go with Kamala and I think Iron Man and Hulk, or no, it's just Hulk. Kamala and Hulk. You go to an AIM facility, or you think you find AIM in the I think it's Utah, the Badlands, and you got to take out some AIM bots, and you do, and then you take out like a dreadnought, which is like a big one, a big fella, and Ant-Man or Hank Pym comes through and shrinks it, and then you find out that he's in the game, and he has his own established base called the Ant Hill. So you go in there, there's some more faction vendors and everything, you're exploring the area, checking it out, and then come to find out, AIM has got some Inhumans in prison somewhere. Kamala feels, I don't want to say entitled, but she feels responsible for trying to save her people, because she's like, they're just like me. They need help like I need help. Bruce is like, you're not ready for this yet, and we're not doing this yet. We've already tried. We don't have enough manpower. She sneaks out, tries to go and do it. She embiggens, wipes people out. She passes out again. Monica captures her, has her tightened up. That's something I forgot about in the story. So a few story beats back, we run into Monica and Tarleton, or who's slowly becoming MODOK. He's a little bigger, his head's a little bigger, he's getting a little more control of his telekinetic powers. They basically like want to go shut down the Avengers now because they have an idea where they're at in this and the third. And Abomination's like, yo, let me go do it. You not ready or whatever, this and the third. Let me go do it. Let me show you. And Tarleton with his little mechanical arm and hand or whatever grabs Abomination and really goes villain on him. And then Monica's like, yo, chill out, chill out. And then he chills out. He's like, yo, I'm sorry, I don't know what got over me. You know, you guys leave me be. So he tells them all to go away so he can regather his thought process because he went super villain in that moment. I thought Abomination was going to play more of a role in the story later because he was still alive. And he didn't. So spoilers for the end. Abomination never shows up again after that scene. So now, yes, fast forward back to Monica. Oh, that actually may have been the scene. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. So they're all talking about, you know, what they want to do, how she's supposedly helping Tarleton, and everything. And Kamala wakes up, but she's strapped to the chair, and then Monica resedates her. So it's like, what? Then who infiltrates to break in and try to save Kamala is Black Widow. Now you guys catching on? You guys catching on yet? Black Widow goes to the facility, finds Kamala, has to beat up Monica in an exosuit. I wish they gave us a different villain, or maybe I didn't mind Monica in an exosuit, but they could have gave us more villains outside of Taskmaster and Abomination and MODOK. There's a total of 6 villains, and they only gave us 3 legitimate ones. The other ones were exosuits and dreadnought, like bots. They could have switched them out. But Black Widow beats out Monica, saves Inhumans, saves Kamala. And then they find out that Black Widow was Tiny Dancer. Black Widow was the one watching over, hacking, keeping an eye on things. So then you unlock Black Widow. Then something happens where like, oh man, I can't remember. Oh, the helicarrier gets attacked. AIM comes through and attacks the helicarrier. They break Monica out. This is when you get Thor. Thor comes through, taking people out. He has to try to control the helicarrier from crashing. So he's recharging the helicarrier to go back in the air. Then Thor disappears. Hulk and Tony now have a dispute because, again, Bruce, not accepting himself, of course, isn't accepting Inhumans, talking kind of crazy about Inhumans again. Kamala's like, yo, what are you talking about? Like, and then Tony starts eating into Bruce, talking about, you don't even accept yourself. That's why you feel that way. Oh, but he's now starting to get it. And then he's like, oh, you're getting me mad. That's who you should accept. That's your power. Why don't you accept that? Boom, boom. They attack each other. They disappear. Now you're with Kamala by herself on the helicarrier. Then there's a floating Iron Man head that shows up just randomly. With Kamala trying to find everybody, trying to find people. And, I guess I should say, rewind just a little bit again. It's my first time really like kind of repiecing story together. Bruce, when they capture Monica after Black Widow beats Monica, they interrogate her to figure out where the rest of the Inhumans are. And she gives a clue as to where, but they don't know what the clue is at that time. They just think she wouldn't talk. So Kamala by herself going through the helicarrier goes back and reads through the interrogation scene that Bruce had with Monica. And Kamala gets the idea of where they're at. And she's like, I got a clue, guys. And then she gives a great speech about you guys are heroes. Our differences is what makes us so strong. You know, very powerful, strong speech that brings Tony and Bruce back together and brings them back to the war table where they kind of link up to figure out what happened. Well, they realize that, Jarvis, I think this is the scene where Jarvis finished hacking the scene where Tarleton looks like he killed Cap. And what actually ended up happening was a full clip that Tony and Jarvis, was able to decrypt was Cap told Tarleton to lock him in there. And then Cap destroyed the Terrigen crystal, which blew up the helicarrier. Because if he didn't do that, the earthquake or whatever was in the earthquake would have pulled everything in, and then it could have destroyed millions of people or like all of San Francisco. So the best thing to do at the time was just destroy the Terrigen crystal. So that way you could minimize the impact that it would have. And then that, of course, not, you're like, oh, Cap's dead now. So Kamala thinks, oh, they're in deep space. Because she said that the Inhumans aren't on Earth, so I think they're in space somewhere. And then something about a satellite name pops up, and Bruce and Tony, I think, know what that satellite's called. Tony had been working on a deep space or a Star Boost armor suit that just had failed. It was a $1.4 billion project that he just kind of put to the side because he couldn't get it to function correctly. And it still kind of didn't as he was flying to get up into space. And when he finally let go of like some of his packs, he was able to fly and control himself to reach the satellite. He's going through the satellite. There's nobody on board. No Inhumans or nothing. So he gets to this chamber where there's clearly somebody that's being used, seeping off of their abilities that they're using to regenerate or help regenerate MODOK and basically fuel and pump the experimentation and the process of making the adaptoids, which is like the ultimate bot and AI that they want to use to protect people. So Tony opens the doggone encasing. It's Cap. Cap is still alive. Cap is still alive. They're using his regenerative abilities to push their experimental research and all that type of stuff. So, Tony saves Cap. They break out of the satellite, getting in an escape pod. Then they're sitting in space. They're sitting in space, just kind of lingering because the escape pod blew out. So they thought they were going to die in space, floating off. Very in-game scene-ish with Nebula and Tony Stark in space. And then who saves them? Captain Marvel. Who saves Cap and Tony? Thor. Thor comes back, saves them, takes them back to Earth. Everybody's excited. Cap is still alive. Cap is proud of Kamala. So now their unit is starting to come together. Then they realize that they got to go save the Inhumans. So they leave to go save the Inhumans in San Francisco and different parts of, no, it was in New York, different parts of the city. And then what happens after that? Then Tony's like, they get back to the helicarrier and they're like, oh, we about to really have a real battle. This is what we need to do. He's like, we need to look good doing it. He builds the Stark Tech suits for them. So we all get the Stark Tech outfits. And then you get to use basically all the heroes to fight the final boss battle, which is basically against MODOK and this Kree creature, but really more so against MODOK. And you just see them fighting. You see the power. And then Kamala has the greatest ending scene for it where she's, fighting the Kree by herself. And you can, I guess you kind of do, it's more of a cinematic scene, but you're fighting the Kree statue monster thing as Kamala. And it was very impactful because you see Kamala like truly accept who she is and tries to talk MODOK into accepting who he is, essentially. But also, like, not to hate on people just because they're different. So she uses Embiggen, fights the Kree thing, and then she passes out again. So every time she Embiggen, she passed out. She wakes back up on the helicarrier. Everybody, all the heroes are like, you did it, great job. Oh my God, you're part of us. Kind of, sort of. They didn't mention she was an Avenger, but you could tell that they're very accepting and probably would love to have her on board. They take her back home so she can run into her dad. And her dad's like, I should have told you to embrace your powers. I should have encouraged you instead of kind of borderline push you away. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're here, but you are grounded from everything except for like your special activities, which is basically helping the Avengers out. So that was a very touching moment at the end with Kamala and her dad, and then they basically close out the scene with the camera panning towards the picture of the Avengers from A-Day that either her dad got after, like post A-Day launch, or that they were able to obtain while they were at A-Day prior to everything falling apart. But that was the story. It was such a great story. The pacing was very well done. Outside of that one mission with Iron Man, well, I feel like maybe it was purposeful to really show you the weight of this mission by making you struggle to fight as Iron Man, because he's more of a long-range based hero, so he's not really that great in, close combat range. But, as an Iron Man user, you'll know the first thing you should do is unlock all his weapons, the lasers and the rockets, and his lasers is a proximity creator that creates space around Iron Man. So that's what I used while I was waiting for Hulkbuster and his other heroic abilities to to charge up to then beat that mission. So that's that. Outside of that, and then at the very end, where right before the final battle scene, that Kamala scene I was talking about. You fight with Hulk and Kamala. You control Hulk though. The problem where I can see the multiplayer aspect affecting the game is where you get some of these heroes late, or because you may have a favorite hero, you may not use the other heroes. It affects the strength of the team, and it affects your ability to use the hero in that moment because you haven't used them long enough. So one of the things I wish that they would have thought of is that, like, you get skill points and you get to some degree some type of armor that's equivalent to the armor or gear that you got for other hero that you leveled up. So that way at the end, you're not struggling to fight a bunch of adaptoids with lower level heroes. And that's the problem I ran into with the Hulk. So just from that standpoint, that's where I see multiplayer having an effect on the story, because it's very based on you leveling up heroes. That's the only area I can see multiplayer really affecting the story like that. Otherwise, the story was completely fine. The story was great storytelling. That's what we needed from a game like Marvel's Avengers that's establishing itself during the MCU time, because there's so much comparisons. Everything Marvel related is at the end of the day pulling from the comic books. So it's hard to say that they're pulling from the MCU or they're pulling from this source when that source is likewise pulling from the same source that the game's pulling from. The comic books, all the quirky commentary, the quirky comedy, the back and forth, the he say, she say, she say, it's from the comics. And so that's what they live up to. And I definitely appreciated that. So to me, I think this game is great. Let me know what you guys think about the story. If you've played it yet, do you plan on playing it? What are you looking forward to in terms of gameplay that I'm going to drop? The gameplay that I plan on dropping here soon will be, well, of course, this video that I'm recording. But after this, I think just like some free roam gameplay. I know how to effectively use the Hulk now. And I know how to... I know how the comic books work in the game. All the comic books you collect, I know how those work. I will do a video on both of these two most likely. And then like I said, free roam gameplay, playing different missions. Videos won't be as long. They'll be like 40 minutes as opposed to the whole hour and a half. And if you guys like them to be a little longer, then I can try to do longer form content again. But I think I'm gonna drop it down to like 40 minutes or even less, more or less than that. Now that I can add myself into it, that's why I can make it longer. So there's that. And then like my builds of like Iron Man or like heroes, like how to, why I build certain heroes out or keep specific gear as I get better gear and as I get gear that I should keep. That's what I'm looking forward to with some of my future videos. Of course, I'm probably gonna take somewhat of a break, after the story stuff. You guys won't know that because I finished the story some time ago. I've just been able to upload it over the course of days, to buy myself time to play the game and just relax, have some fun with it. So looking forward to that. Hope you guys are looking forward to that as well. And again, leave down comments what you guys are looking forward to from me or this channel and from Marvel's Avengers overall. I would love to see more story campaigns. I would love to see more development of Inhumans like Black Bolt and Medusa. I would like to see maybe a whole X-Men arc in this as well. That'd be cool. That'd be very fun to see. I really hope this is just one game that we get for a long time and they just add to it. They fix and crush a bunch of these bugs that we're experiencing, a bunch of these glitches that we're seeing. They fix the frame rate issue, just the small usability, quality of life fixes that this game could definitely use to be polished up. We need those Crystal Dynamics, but they've been very open with the transparency to us in terms of communication and everything. And so we couldn't really ask for anything more other than a helpful and a responsible team. So thank you, Crystal Dynamics, for this. This is great to see in the gaming industry as well. And we look forward to what you're doing with Marvel's Avengers. But that's it for me. If you guys haven't already, again, ignite the like button on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And make sure you guys hit that notification bell so that way YouTube informs you when I drop videos. Yes, YouTube won't let you know a thing unless you hit that notification bell. So go ahead and do that right there. With your boy Versatile signing out. And until the next video, wait for